Hi, Louise Singleton here, and today I've brought you the long-awaited tutorial to show you how to make these beautiful resin lampshades. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is one of these frames. I haven't been able to purchase one like this. I did look online to see what you could purchase, but the very best thing to do is to go through the charity shops and find any old frame that you can find that you think you'll be able to make a panel for. Nothing too fancy because you're going to really struggle, but this is nice and simple because it's got 4 identical panels. And then strip off the old covering for your lampshade and sand off any glue, and there you have it. And it's just like new, so it's better than paying a silly price for a brand new one when you can just go to a charity shop. So I had 2 of these, so I've got a nice pair of lamps to show you at the end. And then when you've got that, you need to be able to make your mould for the panels. Okay, which is made out of silicone, and I've got an extra tutorial for that which I will link to at the end, so you can watch my tutorial. And what you will need is, first of all, if you get some paper and kind of hold it against it so it's actually going against the curve, and draw around it to get a nice paper template. I like to, when I've done that, fold it in half and then cut it out so you've got it completely symmetrical. Then you've got your paper panel shape. Use that then as a template on some foam board. This is 5mm thick because that's how thick I wanted my lamp panels to be. And what I would do is put some of this tape around the edge, because when you cut foam board, sometimes it goes a bit lumpy and you don't want lumpy edges. So I put tape all the way around, but I make sure it only goes down the edge and one side, because if you were to pour silicone over this tape, in your mould you'd have the ridge from the tape. So what you would do is, this side of the panel you would have facing up when you pour your silicone on, and then you've just got a perfectly smooth mould like this one. No ridges, but nice smooth sides because you've got the tape on. So that's that. So then when you've made your mould, it will be time to make your resin panels, and I've got a video I've already done to show you, so we will move on to that now. So here I am arranging the dried lavender into position and taking off any of the little buds that fall off as I go. Try to be really gentle because those buds do fall off all over the place. You can spray them first with some spray varnish, which does help a little bit, but you're never going to stop those buds from falling off, so you do need to be gentle and just pick them up as you go along. And I'm just arranging them until I get them into a position which I like. And now I'm just holding them gently and snipping off the bottoms. And just taking off any buds that fell off in the process. And now what I'm doing, I'm sorry for the camera angle, I really should have planned it better because my hand is blocking the camera, but what I'm doing is very carefully just drizzling my resin over the flowers and trying not to move the flowers too much, because that's when you're going to lose your buds into the resin, and it becomes a bit of a challenge to get rid of them all. I've used Pearl Sea Green as my main colour, which I think works really well with the lavender. Now I'm just pouring on, filling in the gaps. And for the bottom part, I wanted to just make the green a bit darker, so I've added some Resin Sapphire blue, so it just darkens it, and I'm going to pour that along the bottom. And then when you use your heat gun, you do want to just have it on the lowest setting, be really gentle, because you can kind of burn the lavender if you're not careful. And don't use a torch, because it does cause sparks on the lavender, especially if you've sprayed it with varnish. So just a gentle heating with your heat gun, because it won't move it around too much and dislodge any more buds. Just keep it nice and steady. Of course, you do need to use a heat gun, because the whole reason for it is to get rid of the bubbles, and you do get a lot of little bubbles coming out of dried flowers. So I'm just spreading it up a little bit to help to blend it a bit and make it look like there's some foliage in the background. Just to blend it a little bit more heat, and to get rid of any more bubbles. You do need to keep going back to it when you're using flowers. Just keep going and checking, because more and more tiny little bubbles come out from them. So hopefully these flowers are now completely covered in resin, and so when you need to clean it, you won't be able to wipe it because it's too rough, because the flowers do protrude out of the surface. What you'll need to do is just run it under some water to clean it, and just dry it off with a hairdryer rather than wiping it with anything. So if you can see, I'm actually moving them around with a spare piece of lavender. I find it actually works really well to use the piece of lavender as a tool to move the other lavender. It's like when you get a piece of eggshell in your cooking, the best way to get it out is with another piece of eggshell. Just one of those tips you get when you're married to a chef. And so I can see I've missed a bit there that needs just pushing down, but hopefully as I'm watching it I will have remembered. Also, don't forget to make sure your surface is really level, otherwise you're going to end up with a thin side and a thick side. Oh good, there we go, I'm pushing it down. Sometimes you don't see these things till afterwards when you're watching the video. I'm just pressing down any bits that are sticking out too much. And there we go. So now what you need to do is leave it for about 8 hours or so. I tend to leave it overnight, and then demold it when it's still quite bendy, and then you need to lay it on top of the frame to kind of keep the shape of the frame while it becomes completely rigid, and before you're ready to work with it. So when you have all your 4 panels ready, you need to get you some super glue, and here I'm just dotting it all around the edges of the place where I'm going to put the first panel. Super glue works so well for some reason with resin and metal. It just adheres so well. So here I am just dotting it all around, then I'm just going to spread it with the nozzle of the super glue. And then put it on. And the best way to do it is to keep it stood on its base, and if you do the same with all 4, you're going to have them completely aligned with each other. I'm just holding it still for a while there. I have sped this up. I did hold it still for a couple of minutes. And then I'm just going to repeat the process on all sides. And now I'm using hard as nails, which is that stuff that you can get that instead of using nails, basically, it's like a glue for DIY. And the reason I'm using this is because you can paint over it. And with silicone, you can't paint over it quite so well. I'm just going to spread it with my finger. This is the fun bit. I always enjoy this bit. And then you just need to wipe off the mess that you've made on the edges. I got my hard as nails glue just from the pound shop. It's not a special kind. Just any cheap one will do the job. The only problem with it is it does take quite a long time to dry, so you'll need to just check the drying time of yours before you can paint it. And then I'm just going to repeat it on all sides again. You need to leave it to dry, and then what I did was I painted each of the edges, each of those corners, with grey paint, acrylic paint. So here I'm rubbing on some silver on top of the grey paint. That silver rub-on isn't available anymore, but I'll find an alternative for you, and I'll link to it in the description. And I'm trying to make it look like the lead you get in stained glass windows. So what did you think? Did you enjoy it? Did you feel like you can make one of these lampshades too? So easy, really, really easy. And I think they look fantastic. What I would say is only use them with LED light bulbs because they don't give off hardly any heat at all. I did, however, test it last night with an incandescent light bulb, and they do get hot. And I found that there was absolutely no effects, no softening, no bending, and I left it on all night, so it didn't affect the resin. And I actually used 4 different kinds of resin because I wanted to experiment on which one would withstand the heat the best. And to be honest, there was no difference. The only difference in the 4 resins that I used, and I used Art Resin, Mastercast, Ultracast and Total Cast. The only difference I found at all was that the Art Resin did stay bendier for longer, so I didn't need to worry so much about getting up the next morning and finding that it had gone too rigid. It was still nice and bendy and easy to manipulate. but that was the only difference. You would probably see a difference if you was doing something more detailed and see the way the pigments work with different resins, but this was something really simple, and the main reason I did the experiment was for the heat test, and they were all fine. So there we go. If you enjoyed the tutorial and you want to see more, I've made some beautiful resin greetings cards and this lovely picture, which I think turned out really fantastic, and it was just an afterthought. It wasn't planned, I just had some resin left, so I found this picture frame and poured the resin on the glass and put the lavender in and the crystals, and in 5 minutes I'd made this beautiful picture, so I was really pleased with that. So if you like those, I do have another tutorial with those in, so I'll put a link right at the end here at the end. So thank you for watching. Please come back or stay, don't go anywhere, and watch my other tutorials. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.